as appraisers, we are local experts. And ultimately, people can get close with AVMs and with other means of valuation. But if they really want a safe and secure landing or docking, if you will, they need a harbor pilot. They need that local expert.
Originating from deep inside the Rocky Mountains, transported through the power of the internet, and arriving inside your tiny earbuds. It's the Appraiser Coach Podcast.
Minisode.
Welcome to the program, everybody. Dustin Harris hanging out in the podcast here. Actually, I'm standing up, my standing desk. I've been doing that more and more often. I don't find myself in the office very often, but when I do, I like to get a little exercise, at least by balancing on one toe or another. That's about as much exercise as I get, which is why I look the way that I do. I want to, of course, remind you we're sponsored by three great companies. Been with us from the very beginning. Working RE Magazine, of course, letting appraisers know what's going on in the appraisal profession. If you want to know what's going on in your profession, appraisers, jump on Working RE. Sign up for their free newsletter. It goes out frequently throughout the week, and you can be up to date on what's going on in the appraisal world. Again, it's workingre.com. We are sponsored by DataMaster. DataMaster is the ability to be able to download information directly into your report, saving you 30 to 60 minutes per report. That's per report, folks. Go to datamasterusa.com for more information. Again, datamasterusa.com. And finally, sponsored by Alamode Software, the software that I've been using for a long, long time. It's, there's a reason they're the leader in the software industry for appraisers. Check them out. Go to alamode.com or 800-ALAMODE. I want to welcome back to the program a good friend of mine, Mr. Ernie Durbin. He is an SRA out of Ohio. And he's a very smart guy. He's also the winner of this year's Valuation Visionary Award. Welcome to the program, Ernie.
Thank you, Dustin. And actually, the Valuation Visionary Award is it's not really a contest. It's kind of like a nomination that they do every year. I guess they usually nominate three people and then select somebody from it. And I do feel humbled receiving that award. It's about 500 folks in that organization, CRN, and they nominate three every year. And I've been nominated before.
Yeah.
and haven't won. So it's good.
It is quite an honor. I've known past Valuation Visionary Award recipients and very smart people, very much concerned about the appraisal world and the appraisal profession. And that, of course, speaks volumes not only to them, but to you as well. So congratulations for that. And
thank you very much.
One of the reasons I wanted to have you on the program today, Ernie, is you had an opportunity just recently at the Expo to share a presentation that I thought was super interesting. I was not there, unfortunately, couldn't make it because of my travel schedule, but you did share with me your PowerPoint presentation that I went through very carefully. And man, I loved it. And I thought the concept was super, super cool and needed to be shared with the listeners. So thank you for taking time out of your very busy schedule there at Clarosity and the other things that you do in your own appraisal business to share with the listeners. We're going to talk about appraiser pilots today. Ernie, set this up for us.
Yeah, I mean, that's the title of the presentation that I did, and we'll get around to what that means in a minute. But you mentioned the other day that I've been in this business for 35 plus years, and that really dates me, although I'm not really that old. I just started really young, actually.
And you look marvelous.
Yeah. But actually, and you also mentioned my parents were in this business. Actually, my mother is 92 years old in August of this year. And I found an article that I shared at the expo because my mom was there in attendance, right? I'm getting this award, cool. So she wanted to come up. And this article that I found had she was receiving like a Realtor of the Year award or something back in 1972, but it mentioned that she was just starting to take appraisal classes. And my parents went on to get their SRAs in 1980, I think, something like that, 80, 81. And then I joined the business when I came home from college in 1982. So, but boy, I used that article to kind of introduce my talk. And one of the things I was talking about is, let's think about all the regulatory changes that we've experienced as an industry since 1972, or since 1980 for me, or 82 for me, I guess officially. When you look at these changes, and of course the big one, 1989 was FIREA and Title 11, and that was that set the stage for licensure and certification. Before that, to differentiate yourself, you really needed to be designated.
Yeah, it was a big deal.
Anybody could be an appraiser, right? And then later that year, in 1989, we had the first edition of USPAP come out. Certification and licensing actually took effect in 91. And so then we make a big jump from 91 to 2009. And I think that's interesting about why that happened. The 89 regulations that came in effect that brought in licensing and certification, those were a result of the savings and loan crisis.
Yes.
Back in the late 80s. And that brought appraisers to the forefront. And I think we had some culpability in that. To be honest with you, at least in the South, and mostly in the commercial realm. And then we jump forward, and the next thing that we have that happens that I think was a big game changer for a lot of appraisers, including myself, people that run small businesses, was HVCC in 2009.
Yep.
I mean, between then and there were some other things that occurred, but that was huge, right? Because that changed everything whenever we had appraiser independence, more or less not quite legislated, but dictated as a result of the GSE's agreements. And we all know that a lot of folks elected AMCs to provide that independence barrier.
Yep.
Whether that's necessary or not, I won't get into. I don't know that. I think that certainly direct engagement lenders can fulfill those requirements, but a lot of AMCs proliferated, and I think we saw a big shift in business for appraisers then. Then in 2010, later in 2009, HUD required certified appraisers only, and that was a big deal.
It was a big deal.
Appraisers,
yeah.
Because that shifted really to where suddenly it seemed like lenders, they wanted some fungibility with their loans. They wanted to be able to change them from one thing to another. So they would just ask for certified appraisers. And I think that was a big shift in the marketplace. And then, of course, 2010 was Dodd-Frank, which codified independence, inside of that. And AIR, or appraisal independence, came as a result of Dodd-Frank, and the HVCC kind of sunsetted. And, of course, we had AMC legislation in there, and customary reasonable fees. 2012, Uniform Collateral Data Portal came into being. And of course, that's UCDP and UAD, and we had to learn a lot about standardization there. And then 2015, we had Collateral Underwriter, which is probably the latest major change. And I call it a regulatory change because really we can't function without it. I mean, the FHA adopted it, so did VA.
Well, at least if you're dealing with Fannie Mae, absolutely, yeah.
Right, yeah. So, this industry, if anybody knows about change, this industry understands change. And I did hear your podcast the other day talking about your friend in the insurance industry.
Yeah,
boy, they've gone through it too.
Yeah,
right? But
absolutely.
We certainly have our share of change.
Well, you know why I'm laughing, Ernie, because when you talk about we've had our fair share of change, I mean, appraisers are no different than any other human beings. We still don't take it very well.
Oh, no, not well at all. And I don't, I'm not afraid of change, but I don't like it either.
Sure.
I don't, because once you get in the routine of things and you're making money and you've got systems built around it, when things change, you have to adjust those. And that is taxing on the economics, right? And as much as you may like it after it's done, going through that process is not great, right? And then, of course, think about that's just the regulatory stuff. We've had form software. I mean, I remember there was a day whenever we actually hand wrote our Green Hornets.
Yeah.
And then the early URARs and handed them off to a typist, right? I mean, I remember those days. That was early in my career, but form software, it didn't come out to the mid 80s, really. I know that because I had to develop my first version. I couldn't find it. Don't forget, Al Gore had not invented the internet yet. And so,
some people are saying Green Hornet. What are you talking about? Is that a comic book character? But Google it. Right?
No, that was a one-page green form that we used mainly for HUD VA, but other people adopted it, and so then we had form software, and then sketching became electronic, which was awesome. Laser printing came out. I remember whenever we first got our first laser printer, Dustin, I was so proud of that, and it was terribly expensive and terribly slow. It's like 4 pages a minute, right?
Right.
So I mean, it would take several minutes to print out an appraisal. And I remember taking that up to back then. This bank was around as one of our major clients called First National. They've changed their name and been sold and all that stuff since then. But I took it up there. I was so proud of it. And they said, well, this is really neat, but we want an original. I said, well, wait, it is an original. But they thought it was a photocopy, right?
Yeah.
Even though I'd signed it. And so MLS and public records came online. I remember having all the books in the back of my car driving around, digital photography, fax machines, email, now PDF, and now we're portal delivery, XML data sets. I mean, we have gone through so much change since I came in this business.
Yeah.
And a lot of it, since almost everybody, all your listeners have experienced some portion of this change, right? At least the ones from 2009 forward, that's been a very, very wide and long path we've been on. But in all of those dates, that I went through all the regulatory changes and things, when I look back on my career, there's actually one day that I think changed the direction of my career entirely. And that was July 1st, 2006.
Okay.
Do you know what happened on July 1st? You've got the PowerPoint.
I do, so but I'm not going to. No, Ernie, what happened on July 1st?
Thank you. All right. So a new version of USPAP came out. And I know that most people loathe USPAP. I kind of one of these people that, it's kind of the rules of the road, and I like learning it. And but in July 1st, 2006, the 2006 version of USPAP came out. That was before we went to the 2-year cycle. So they just came out every so often then. And when it became effective, we got rid of the departure provision. I don't know if you remember. Were you?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Departure provision and the scope of work rule was introduced. Yep. And that was a game changer, I think, in this business. I mean, the departure provision would allow appraisers to do something less than the work that was required, right? But by all the certain standard rules. And as a result, what we were saying is we were departing to give our clients some flexibility inside of USPAP. We said, well, we should do it this way, but here's a way we're going to depart from the way we should do it to supply results to you under the intended use that you want. And that really was, it was the way it started. A lot of appraisers didn't understand the departure provision. They had a hard time implementing it, particularly in the residential space. Commercial space was they were a little more hip to it because there was always a kind of requirements for that. But that was what replaced that was the scope of work rule. And the scope of work rule is a lot more systematic concept than departure. In the scope of work rule, which is what I think really changed our business, the appraiser first identifies the client, the intended users, the intended use of the assignment results, and the type of value to be developed. Then they decide the amount of research and analysis for credible results inside the context of that intended use. Now, what I mean by that basically is every assignment, there's not really any ideal solution or standard solution, right? Appraisers, or no standard solution is what I meant to say. Appraisers select the ideal solution in the scope of work, right? So,
and explain.
The appraiser gets, and get to consider what's the best solution for the problem at hand. So, scope of work really gives appraisers the ability to tailor each assignment to the appropriate circumstances that the client and the intended use is for. It's interesting. When I talk to appraisers, we all know about intended users, and intended users are who appraisers intend to use that report. Right?
Okay, sure. Not necessarily
that's
who's actually going to use them, right?
Right, but we say we intend no one else other than the client, or the client in this set of, by either by definition or by listing them actually. Did you ever realize that the intended use is also an appraiser decision?
Okay.
I mean, that's a big deal when you think about it. In other words, anytime the word intended is used, it's the appraiser's intent, right?
Gotcha.
It's not the client's intent.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And we negotiate that with our clients, right? Except for, of course, in many cases, particularly in the residential space, the way the negotiation goes is, I'm not going to do it that way. Click, right?
Right.
Or maybe a little more polite with, I don't think I can have credible results. You're going to have to move on to someone else, or we'll change the way we do business. And so, but ultimately, we're in control of that scope of work, and understanding scope of work can really lead appraisers to new business opportunities. And scope of work allows us to adapt to change. We're talking about change today. Scope of work allows us to adapt to the changing needs of our clients, right? I mean, clients have all kinds of different needs based on the problem that we're solving for them, and their intended use that we understand and agree with, right? So the intended use, if the intended use is to assess a sample of a large portfolio of loans, and that sample is 1,000 units, right? That's completely different than a collateral risk decision. They already own these properties. They want to know where they stand in terms of marking them to market. So if they choose to sell them or not to another investor, that's completely different intended use than a first-time buyer that's putting down 3%.
Yeah, I think I understand what you're saying, because you're talking about the difference between here's the standard, and if you're going to quote unquote depart from that, then you need to explain why, to the scope of work where it's more of a decision from the appraiser's perspective, even though I think, as you pointed out, we often think of that backward, 180 degree different than what it actually is. But now as an appraiser, we can decide what the intended user is, what the intended use is, and then proceed accordingly, not with a standard and then depart, but with a new scope of work. In other words, we have more control.
We have complete control, right? And we're tailoring our solution to their problem, to the problem.
Right.
So,
right. So when an individual came to me last week and said, "Hey, Dustin, I've got a situation," and I won't reveal too much of the details here, but he had a client come to him and say, "I've got, I think it was 30 plus properties that he needed appraised," and he said, "Dustin, I can't understand how I'm going to be able to make this cost effective for this individual. We've got 30 properties that need to be appraised, and I've not done mass appraisal, and And we had a conversation back and forth, and I basically sat back and I said, "Wait a second, you keep thinking through this idea of a 1004 or even a general purpose, or you got to stop thinking that way, because you are a valuation expert. You're not a form filler." And once we had that on the table, it was now, okay, now we can start to look at this a little bit different.
Exactly. And so I remember when this first came out in July 1st, 2006, by the end of that year, I had developed my first, I hate this word, but I'm going to use it, alternative appraisal report.
Right, sure.
And really what I meant was something other than the URAR,
mm-hmm.
right? And I developed that because we had clients that had groups of properties, that needed to be appraised, and they were ordering drive-bys, the 2055s on them, and there's a lot of additional work that goes into complying with what you agree to in the scope of work of a 2055 that didn't add anything to the credibility of the report and the results that they needed to make the decision they needed to make, right? So by the end of that year, I had developed my my first and it was regression based, and used qualitative analysis after the regression was applied, and we were charging, like, I don't know, couple $100 for those, which
Yeah.
saved the client not much money, about $100 back in that day, but they were faster and they enjoyed that savings. And scope of work allowed me to understand my client's problem and adapt a product to that, and not just take something off the shelf. Right?
And still, remain USPAP compliant, and still remain state law compliant, and everything else.
Without a question. And so, we've talked about change in this, and at the heart of responding to change is scope of work. So that's kind of where I was headed with that. But, we've got some big changes coming on the horizon. I read a quote out of Working RE magazine. I believe they're a
sponsor here.
Right?
Yeah.
And this came from the August issue in 2017, where the CEO of Fannie Mae said, "We're not interested in eliminating appraisals." Well, I'm kind of glad he said that.
Yeah, thank you.
Comma, but we should be exploring options electronically. He said, appraisers should be at their desks, not in the field with a measuring tape, making phone calls or tracking down homeowners, he added. And so, this is the CEO of Fannie Mae. We all know that this bifurcated process is coming, right? We're doing it on some products right now that are home equity and default and servicing. Our company at Clarosity, we have a product that has someone else do the inspection. Mm-hmm. But that's from the CEO of Fannie Mae. They're looking down the line and looking at changing the process too. And so what we need to know from scope of work with that, Dustin, is that may be the scope of work that the client wants us to do. And probably 90% of the time, that's going to be the appropriate scope of work given their intended use and the intended use that we understand and we intend for the product. But there's going to be some of those that we're going to have to say, whoa, this is not the right scope of work for this process. Right. This type of property doesn't fit that scope of work. It's going to require either a physical inspection by the appraiser or more details in some sort or another. So appraisers are still in control of that process, but we have to realize that those kind of things are coming in the future. Right. And I think we're going to see, assignments where appraisers don't do inspections. We're going to see assignments where appraisers rely on qualitative analysis and not make adjustments. That's appropriate in many circumstances. We're going to see assignments in the future where there's a lot of information pushed to the appraiser, right? There's metrics on the neighborhood, and the appraiser may be operating a interactive valuation model where they draw polygons around the neighborhood and selecting comparables, and then take that information and verify it with their local MLS and their local sources, and use that information as part of the appraisal process. These are all some of the changes I think we'll see in the future. Regression assisted adjustments, web-based report development, no inspection, all these things. I think I see in the future the use of virtual reality and personal robots.
Yeah.
Want to hear about that one?
Did
you ever think about that?
Wasn't it you that gave me some VR glasses at one of the conferences? I swear it was you.
Somebody else.
Oh, okay. Well,
me.
I walked through and inside all of the rooms. I walked through the kitchen, the living room, around the outside house using VR glasses at one of my conferences.
Yeah,
it was amazing.
So that's cool. But now this is wild. Okay, but we'll look back on this date 10 years from now and see how wild it was. Right. I predict that in the future, in the not too distant future, we're all going to have some level of personal robots in our house.
Okay.
I'm serious.
No, you're just talking crazy.
No, well, I mean, already you got those things that chase the cat, and sweep the floor, right? And so
That's true.
And if you listen to Elon Musk and others, I mean, they'll probably be having some type of. I mean, we've got Siri and we've got Alexa and all these other things that are right now are voice based. It won't be long till they're serving you, a Manhattan as well, right?
As long as it doesn't come in a pill like they did with the Jetsons, I want a full meal.
They're cleaning up the house and things like that. Imagine a day in the future. I know this sounds crazy, where as the appraiser, you ask for access to the personal robot and you walk the robot through the house. Look at that. I mean, okay, that's a little out there, but we'll see.
Oh, we'll see.
Who knows?
We'll see.
The moral story is that
go ahead.
things are changing, and artificial intelligence. Jeff does a lot of.
Jeff Bradford.
Jeff touches on that a lot.
Yep.
Jeff Bradford.
Yeah.
But all of these things get back to the title of my talk at Valuation Expo, Valuation Pilots.
Okay. Okay, I want to pause you there for just a second because we're talking about change. And, one of the great things about a la mode software is that it allows you to make those changes. I talked about this conversation I had with an appraiser here recently. And he's got 30 properties that he needs appraised for one client. And then, after we talked through the options there, he said, well, where do I go for that kind of a form as we talked about? And I said, well, first of all, it doesn't have to be a form. But second of all, let's go to a la mode software and see what's available. And I'll tell you, within seconds, we found an option that was perfect for what he was looking to do and for what his client needed. That's what a la mode software can do for you, in addition to all kinds of other things. A la mode is on the cutting edge. We talk about change today, folks. They're on the cutting edge of change. You need to be with a la mode software if you're not now. Go to alamode.com or call them at 800 a la mode and talk to them. Have a conversation about what they can do for you. Also, speaking of being able to do things differently than we've done in the past, what about Data Master? The ability to save 30 to 60 minutes per report, folks. Let's face it, most of us are doing 2055s, we're doing 1004s, we're doing 1025s. All of those forms and more can be utilized with Data Master, no matter what software company you're with. Folks, you're either going to have to hand type that, you're going to have to hire it out, or you can get Data Master. Data Master will save you time. It'll save you money. Check them out. It is an investment in the future and the changes that are coming. And speaking of changes, Data Master 6 is rolling out across the country. Huge changes with Data Master 6. You're going to want to be on board. Check it out. Go to datamasterusa.com. Again, it's datamasterusa.com. I love the fact that we're talking about change. We're talking about the future. We're talking about professions and specifically the appraisal profession. And Ernie, of course, is my guest, and he pulls out of his hat a quote from Fannie Mae CEO. And where did he get it from? That's right, Working RE Magazine. Folks, if you want to be on top of what's going on in the appraisal world, you want to find these quotes, you want to find out where things are moving and shaking. But I tell you, if you want to be successful, it all comes down to recognizing that change is coming, recognizing what that change is, where the waves are floating, and getting in front of that change. And Working RE Magazine can help you to do that. Go to workingre.com for more information. One more time, it's workingre.com. And welcome back, folks. We are talking about change today, and we're talking with Ernie Durbin, the evaluation visionary of 2018 now?
It is 2018.
Speaking of change, I'm still putting 2017 on my checks, man. It's here we are to May.
Listening to you do your commercial for your sponsors, and I apologize for not letting you get a word in edgewise to try to make some money from this, but
it's all good.
But anyway, that's some of the stuff I'm talking about, right? I mean, you look at all modes got they've got all kinds of tools that allow the appraiser to look at data differently, and they got the spreadsheet tool and things like that, and they're Data Master, same thing. This gets down to the point where appraisers need to use technology and to assist them in doing anything that is menial and doesn't require valuation intelligence.
Absolutely.
Right? And you've talked about that in terms of the way you've structured your business in the past about having a delegation, right? When we had Durbin Associates, which I shut down in 2009. Interesting, kind of around a certain date.
Yeah.
2009. But when I had Durbin Associates, we all had para appraisers, we call them, that worked with us, did a lot of the reporting. And if it was not a value related decision or task, someone else did it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, whatever it was, sticking photos down with it, and then finally printing, and then labeling, and calling for the appointment, any of that stuff. If it's the same as when you go to your doctor, you're the nurse or the physician's assistant does a lot of the work, but the doctor makes the final diagnosis and takes responsibility for your care.
Exactly.
So, yep. So that gets kind of to the changing role that I think the appraiser is going to be in the future. I think we need to be harbor pilots, not cruise ship captains.
All right. Set this up for us.
All right. So if you've ever been on a cruise ship or been near a major port and seen even a oil tanker come in or any major vessel, there's an interesting dance that occurs there, and it's usually within a mile or two of the harbor. The cruise ship will slow down. I remember we went into New Orleans once about 15 years ago with my family when my kids were smaller, and I got them up to look at this because it happened in the morning, and the ship will slow way down to about 6 to 8 knots, and then you'll see this other boat, ship. Remember how to tell the difference between a boat and a ship. You can put a boat on a ship.
Okay.
That's how you tell. Okay. So you see this boat come up beside you and synchronized with the speed, and this guy jumps off the boat onto like a rope ladder, and then climbs up a few steps, and then comes inside the side of the boat, right? And that guy that jumps off the boat is the harbor pilot. Now, it's interesting that in almost every major port worldwide requires a harbor pilot, because those local waters are treacherous, and you have to know exactly where the channel is in these waters. And so the pilot knows that local harbor like the back of his or her hand. And they are the ones that take that ship into dock. And so you might have a cruise ship captain. You have a cruise ship captain. He's out there. Cruise ship captains have a cool job, I think.
Sure.
Most of the time they're on autopilot, right? Up on the bridge, it's just,
wait a minute. You're telling me they're not holding that wheel and just kind of just doing
No, man, they get to dress in these white suits, and they go to really fine dinners, and they marry people, right?
Sure.
Yes, they're responsible for the whole voyage. I know there are some cruise ship lines that they won't tell you this, but if you look it up, you'll find that on these mega ships, they have 2 or 3 people dressed up as captains because they have so many dinners to go to. Right? Gotcha. There really is only one captain.
Right.
But anyway, they are in charge of the vessel, but they may take it 5,000 miles to cross the ocean into the Gulf and up into New Orleans. But getting close, the cruise ship captain gives command of that ship to the harbor pilot, because the harbor pilot is the local expert. And the harbor pilots are...
that is super interesting, Ernie. I did not know that.
And harbor pilots are actually... they're there, believe it or not, and you can read this on their web pages. They're there to protect the public trust.
Ah, boy, I've heard that before. Right? Where have I heard that?
Yeah, because here's the deal: if a cruise ship captain doesn't understand those waters and runs his or her ship ashore, maybe they're not going to do a lot of damage if it's a silt bottom, but they're going to block a harbor that's required for a lot of commerce, right?
Right.
So they're required to give up command of their vessel for the last several miles. Now, my analogy is simple here, and that is, I think that as appraisers, we are local experts, and ultimately, people can get close with AVMs and with other means of valuation, but if they really want a safe and secure landing or docking, if you will, they need a harbor pilot. They need that local expert, right? Now, how much do you think a cruise ship captain makes a year?
If I had to guess, I would put it somewhere in the 100,000 range.
Yeah, you're not far off. The average salary for a cruise ship captain, according to Google, which is always right.
Oh, of course, it's on the internet.
If it's on the internet, it's true. So according to Google, the average cruise ship captain is paid $153,400 rounded in the nearest hundred.
Okay, 153. Okay, all right.
153.4. That's still not. That's not bad. I think that there's a lot of appraisers out there that would like to make that mark. Right.
I hear you. I think I know where this is going. Now you're going to ask how much a harbor pilot makes.
How much do you think a harbor pilot makes?
Well, based on what you just said, I mean, the fact that they, the cruise ship captain takes the ship 5,000 miles and the harbor pilot takes it the last 2. Right. I would guess it's going to be less, right?
No, you're guessed wrong.
Yeah.
So, because it doesn't work for the example anyway. But no, this is shocking. The average salary of a harbor pilot is $411,000.
Wow, that's almost 4 times what the cruise ship captain makes.
Yeah, at least three times.
Yeah.
Math is hard.
I went to public schools.
But anyway, it's 3 times the amount. And remember, they're probably not taking one vessel in a day.
Sure.
That's a busy. They may be taking command of 3 to 4 vessels a day. And but they are the local experts. And I think in the future, we're going to see technology and other people involved in the evaluation process that's going to bring a lot of the information to us. Inspection of the house, metrics on the neighborhood, things like that. And then we're going to be the harbor pilots that make the final decision and protect the public trust.
Yeah. And the key here,
appraisers need to be. And I do think that in the same example, we're going to find appraisers in the future are going to make a lot more money as a result of that, because they won't be taking the one vessel in a day. There's going to be 4.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So the point being is the harbor pilot makes more money because they are the expert. They've set themselves up as the expert. They've proven that they can keep that public trust intact. And I think as appraisers, man, I love this analogy, Ernie. I just love this analogy. The idea here that your doctor doesn't take your temperature. Now your temperature is taken whenever you go to the doctor, but your doctor's not that. And I don't think any of us would want that. I think that we'd be a little bit leery of the doctor's office where the doctor came out and checked you in and walked you through the process and gave you the paperwork and took your insurance card and then weighed you and took your temperature and then sat in there and talked to you for 45 minutes to get your symptoms and then walked out and then put the white coat back on and then came back in for the last 15 minutes of the visit. Right? That'd be a little bit scary.
I would be worried that doctor may not have a lot of business, but maybe they would be busy, but they're not optimized. They're not specialists, right?
Yeah.
So, and I really do. I believe in this analogy because I think that, it's interesting. Most harbor pilots, by the way, are former captains of major vessels.
That
you
makes
don't
sense.
get there by, you don't go to harbor pilot school. Actually, maybe you do, but
maybe you do,
but I really don't. But the moral of the story is they're former captains, and but they've grown in their career to the point where they're now specializing in one area. And I see that. I think that as much as I love technology, and I believe that AVMs. I've developed AVMs myself personally. I don't think they can protect the public trust the way a real estate appraiser can.
Yep.
But by the same token, I don't think that we are serving the public by saying this is the only way you're going to get our opinion by this scope of work. If the scope of work exceeds the needs of the client, that's not protecting the public trust either. Now, I will tell you, Dustin, and this is probably an uncomfortable part in our broadcast and something you'll probably hear in comments on. But there are fewer harbor pilots than there are cruise ship captains.
Sure.
And in looking to the future of appraisal, I do believe that there probably is, we're going to need fewer appraisers to accomplish the same number of valuations that we're doing now. And I don't think that's going to reduce the credibility. I think it's just change, right? Is what it boils down to. Now, that may be disconcerting to some out there. I hesitate to think that it would be disconcerting to people that listen to this broadcast, because people that engage in their industry, engage with their coalitions, or with other industry participants, like get designated by the Appraisal Institute, go to major meetings like come up throughout the year. Valuation Expo is an example. Got all kinds of them. We got 2 or 3 now a year. People that are engaged in their profession, they're going to be the harbor pilots.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's what it boils down to. And some of the people out there that are really more form technicians than appraisers, that's going to be tough on them.
Yeah. Well, and they may have a job, but there is a difference between the two. And
they might. Or maybe they'll be the valuation inspectors, right?
Right. Well, and I think this fear of change is a good one to have. Again, fear is a great motivator, a poor problem solver, as I've been known to say. But fear is out there for a reason. You should take note of the changes that are happening. But I think the key here, Ernie, is that we position ourselves as the expert, that we sell our services, if you will. Those of us who might be, those appraisers who might be worried about their future and saying, AVMs are taking over the world, or, I'm afraid if I give up the inspection, or if I give up this, that, or the other, that there'll be no need for me, that I'm shooting myself in the foot. And I think the exact opposite. What you do is you look at what is it that you contribute to the marketplace? What is it? What value? And I'm not talking house value here. I'm talking about value from your profession. What value do you have, and what can you offer your clients? And as long as we can educate and help people understand the importance of the harbor pilot, if you will, that last few miles, the expertise, the doctor in the office for the 15 minutes at the end of the visit, if we can position ourselves as professionals. And that's a key. I know that's a word that gets thrown around so much the last little while, that, we're professionals, damn it. And you know what? We need to act like it. We need to show other people that we're professionals, not so much about, if we have a 4-year degree or not. There's an argument to be made there. That's beside the point. My point is, what value do you bring to the marketplace? How can you position yourself as a professional and be able to move into the future? Does a professional inspect? Maybe. I think there's an argument to be had there too. And maybe it just brings the boat into the harbor the last few miles because we're the expert there.
There are many times when I think the appraiser has to inspect, and we don't want appraisers to lose connectivity with their marketplace by always keeping them inside, right? I mean, that's not the future of the appraiser either.
Exactly.
I just think that there's going to be a mix of assignments, and to wrap this all up, it all boils down to scope of work, understanding scope of work. If you understand that, that you're a problem solver and you do add value.
Exactly.
And so I finished my presentation to Expo up with a quote from, of all people, Jimmy Dean, of Jimmy Dean Sausage.
Yeah.
Which, if you've met me, you probably understand that I have an appreciation for sausage. But he did have this great quote, because he was a consummate business person, among other things. And he said, I can't change the direction of the wind, but I can adjust my sails to always reach my destination.
Love it. Yeah. You can't necessarily affect the change, but how will you be affected by the change? Absolutely.
And I do think that we need to. That doesn't mean that appraisers still need to be deeply involved in the process of decision making about the future, right? In other words, we don't want to just accept what's handed down, because we are the experts. And it might be easy for somebody to think, some statistician out there to think that, oh, well, they always hit the mark, so who cares? Let's just go with AVMs. And we're not protecting the public trust if we lay down either,
exactly.
Right? So we have to speak up. But I think we also have to understand that technology and the way things have changed means that our role changes. It doesn't mean that we don't exist. It means our role changes.
Exactly.
We're pilots.
Yep.
Not captains.
Love it. Great way to look at things. And changes are coming, Ernie. Where are we going to be with those? I guess that is dependent on each of us, right?
Yeah.
Thank you, my friend.
I've got probably, at my age, I've probably got another 8 to 10 years in this industry, so we'll see.
Yeah, things will change a lot in 8 to 10 years. Absolutely. That was Mr. Ernie Durbin. He is an SRA and a very smart guy. He's at Clarosity. I appreciate him taking time. He's also the valuation visionary for 2018. Very smart guy and understands what it is that we as appraisers are and what we do. We're valuation experts, folks. Don't forget that. We're not just appraisers. We're valuation experts. With the change, how will you position yourself in the future? Speaking of which, I hope you're a part of my Appraiser Academy. We're all about understanding the changes that are coming and positioning yourself to be a better business owner. That means to be more successful as a real estate appraiser or valuation expert. Join me, won't you? TheAppraiserCoach.com is where you need to go. Go to the membership site and check it out. We meet once a month, and we meet live, and it's interactive, and we also record it in case you can't make it, so you can also listen as you drive around. But the opportunity to improve your business is what we're all about there at the Appraiser Academy. Thanks for joining us today, folks. We'll catch you next time.
You've been listening to the Appraiser Coach podcast with Dustin Harris. If you like what you hear, please give us a 5-star rating and post a short review on iTunes. For more in-depth insider information on how you can make more money as a real estate appraiser, visit theappraisercoach.com and sign up for the All-Star team today. Thanks for joining us. And now, get out there and create some value.